what I want people to remember is recovery is possible, redemption is possible, and forgiveness is always available.
Amen.
And I think that that's what I really learned out of it. You know, I think that I came to addiction through a lot of different events that happened in my life. I always, as I described at the prayer breakfast, was I being prepared or was I being punished? And I had to come to terms with that. And that was very difficult for me to come to. And so it started very early on. Lost my mom when I was very young. I was last of 7 children, was put in a foster care, moved around foster homes. I was fortunate enough to be, ended up in the Carter household that my mother and father were Second World War veterans, and they cared for foster babies. As a matter of fact, 22 from 1948 to 1962. And I was one of them, and they adopted me, and they had 3 of their own children. So that was the first kind of hurdle with adoption and coming to terms with that. Then going off to school as a youngster and having undiagnosed severe learning disability, which is very common today, which is called dyslexia, but was not diagnosed in the 60s. And I spent a lot of time in the hallways and you know, not in the classroom, and that was very difficult. And then when I was about 7 years old, I was a paper boy, and I was raped by a stranger when I was doing my papers. And I never spoke about that until I was 31. And then when I was 13, my brother Michael, that was a police officer and joined the police force in 1967, a father of 3, moved just to Oshawa just at that time, was killed in a motorcycle accident at the age of 28. And that was devastating for me. And that was kind of that turning point in regards to I had no self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, like all of the things that you hope as a child that you would kind of gather.
Right.
I turned to alcohol, and it was at my brother's wake that I was introduced to alcohol. And what alcohol gave me was I was charismatic, and I was funny, and I was smart, and I thought that. And alcohol did that for me. And what happened was once I experienced that, then you kept seeking out alcohol. And because alcohol did so much, I wonder, after a while, it stopped working. So then interjection of drugs then goes hand in hand. And that journey took me for 17 years, where I was mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually broken until June 17th of 1991, when I visited my sister, and she said, "You've got a choice today. You either sober up or die." And I was so sick at that time. I was so broken. And, I remember standing there, just tears running down my face, so scared and not knowing what to do. But I was blessed and lucky enough that my sister not only had the resources, but also knew the people that could help me at that time. And I was fortunate enough. But when I got into rehabilitation, and I spent almost a year in that journey, it was the first time I talked about my dyslexia and how I felt about that and the bullying that went on. It was the first time I talked about being raped. I never shared that with my parents. I was so ashamed of what transpired. I talked about how I felt about my brother and when he died. It was all those kind of things, which was a safe space to actually be able to honestly just say, this is how I feel, and this is what I went through. And I was very, very fortunate. And, I did tremendous up till May of 2000, the 17th day of May, when I got a phone call from my brother stating that my sister that had saved my life ended her life. And that was, I would say, one of the most devastating events of my life, because she was successful, she was smart, she didn't have addiction or mental health issues. And she was such an influence on me. She always believed that there was the good in me. She always believed I would succeed at something. She always knew that I was smarter than I even thought I was smart. And when she took her life, to be absolutely honest, it devastated, and I still struggle with it even today, because suicide never leaves you, and I think it always questions you. What could I have done?
Right.
Why didn't I see that? So
there's so much there.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
No, I'm humbled that you're willing to be open to share about like that. And someone once said to me, a secret loses its power when it's no longer a secret.
Yeah.
And when you were able to open up and share the hurt and the challenge, it led to some transformation in you, transformation spiritually for you,
Yes.
your faith journey.
Yeah.
Can you share just a couple seconds about that?
Yeah, I mean, I went to, matter of fact, the gentleman at the time was Doug Snyder. He was at the Embassy Church in Oshawa, and this is after Maureen had committed suicide. And I was struggling. I was really struggling. I didn't pick up any drugs or alcohol. I would never dishonor her, but I was struggling with it. And I went to him and I just said, like, I'm really, really struggling, and I don't know what to do. And he said, have you read your Bible? And I said, well, I grew up in a Presbyterian church, and my family went to church, and I'm dyslexic, so I don't really understand the Old Testament. And he said, and he reached over into his desk and he handed me a book called The Message. And he said, I need you to read that. And I said, I want you to read 2 pages every day. And then you and I are going to meet on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And I said, okay. I had nothing to lose, and I was holding on for everything. And we kept coming back and back. And I said to him at one time, I said, I didn't realize that the people that surrounded Jesus, like, some of them were really bad guys. Like, and I that was a shock to me. And he said, that's really interesting. He said, why do you think that is, Danny? And I said, I don't know. And he said, could you relate to perfection? And I said, no, I couldn't. And he said, think about that then. So they're as broken as you, but isn't there a message in regards to all of us fit, all of us belong, all of us are loved, all of us are cared for? And I think that really kind of transformed my connection to my faith again. And I understood that as broken and as imperfect I was, that God loved me, that there was a place for me, that redemption was there, recovery was there, forgiveness was there, that a pathway was there. It was one of those moments that really changed my life forever. And by the way, there's days that I'm a really good Christian, and there's some days that I'm not a great Christian. Yeah. So I just want to make that clear.
All
right,
of us.
Right.
Yeah.
So what a wonderful thing, though, and I could relate to that.
Yep.
Because brokenness I could relate to, and then I could understand why Jesus would use people that were so broken, so that all of us are relatable, because all of us are imperfect.